It can happen here. Rest assured it is already. It will happen here. Grab a wheel and don't be late. It can happen here. Even if denied, it cannot stop if you wanted it to. A wave hits and we disappear. It can happen here. It can happen here. It can happen here. It can happen here. The walls busted all wide open through the looking glass. The hand reaches back, the wheel just turns. It can happen here. It can happen. It can happen here. It can happen here. It could come to this. The paradigms are slowly fading on a blinking eye. There is no turning back, of course. Could come to this. What makes you think you are immune? It could come to this. It's a bitter pill, just swallow hard. Yeah. It can happen here. It might never change, but I doubt it'll stay the same. It might never change. Once more, the clock is spinning. It might never change. How could you ever not accept it might never change? How could it ever not? It can happen here. 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 It can happen here.
Let us be a faith that gathers, reaching for one another, through the walls of hate others build, through the cages of ignorance and arrogance, and through the fear that burns city streets. Let us be a faith that sees a vision of a better world, more compassionate, more just, more holy, and with more love. There is a faith that binds up the broken, cauterizes battle wounds with the balm of peace, sings longer and louder than the trumpets of war. Let us be that faith too. Let us be the ones who do not tread lightly in this world, but light it up with our love, who hold up the mirror of worth and dignity, who are the sanctuary others seek. But first, let us be a faith that worships together here this morning, in these spaces, at this moment. Let us be that faith. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to UUYO's virtual services. We are a unique church. Our members are not bound together by a shared creed, which means you do not need to sign your name to one set of beliefs to be a member of this church. Instead, we are bound together by a commitment to our life in the here and now, and the life of our neighbors in the here and now, guided by love, compassion, and justice. If this is your first, second, or third time, we would love to get to know you better. Everyone who attends, and to get to know each other a little bit better as well. Again, we are so glad that you are here and welcome this morning. A few very quick announcements. We have been having our services and other church activities virtually. There are a few other things that the church is involved in that are happening virtually that we would like to make sure you are aware of. The first is on Saturday mornings, UUYO has been hosting abolition ministries for those of you who are interested in racial justice activities. Please check your emails throughout the week for information about the abolition ministries occurring on Sunday mornings, for time and any additional readings or materials that you would need in preparation for the discussion. Also, summer religious education will be held today after service at 12:30. This week's lesson is animals, fish and birds. There will be an activity to create a bird feeder. Supplies that would be needed are pine cones or toilet paper rolls, some sort of nut butter or shortening, no honey, string, cereal, or cut up fruit, something to stick to the item that you are using. And if you have any questions about religious education, please email Mystery Wallace at dre@uuyo.org. And Marcia Malmer is making fabric masks with good quality cotton, double or triple layer. These masks are free to anyone who needs them. A donation to the church would be welcome, but it is not required. Information on how to request a mask from Marcia through email or by phone is in your weekly update. So again, we are conducting our activities and our services virtually so that everyone can stay safe and healthy. Should you need to go out into the wider world, we want to make sure you are safe to do that as well. So again, if you do need a fabric mask from Marcia, that information is available through email or phone in the weekly update. So please get in touch with her if you are interested in you or someone you know needing a mask. I would now, it is my pleasure to invite Cheryl Shartle to deliver our chalice lighting this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I was reflecting yesterday on this question of, will these recent protests, demonstrations, and demands achieve change, and will they bring our country closer to becoming a land of life, liberty, and equality for all? My feeling is yes. Yes, they will. My sense is we've reached a tipping point in our collective, and we will achieve change if we remain devoted to transforming our nation. It will be incredibly messy and complex. Revolution, evolution is messy and complex. Devotion is the key for me. On the individual level, I find myself asking and then listening to my own internal guidance and larger part of myself, what is mine to do in the face of this? In my experience, this requires a good bit of going within, turning off the news, getting quiet, and really tuning into my inner wisdom and my relationship with Source around this inquiry of what is mine to do in the face of this. This process of inquiry also requires me to slow down and not move into immediate action to do something for the sake of giving my ego something to be proud that I did. My ego wants to immediately dash out and do. However, I've learned that the wisdom of the pause and the slowing down brings me to what I call right action, or doing what serves the good of the whole as opposed to the good of my ego. To share part of my experience with you, I have a group of 8 women from around the country who meet every Monday night with a purpose of holding one another and the collective in prayer and intention. We've all been doing this work individually for over 2 decades and came together as a circle for this purpose almost 2 years ago. We each have our own professions and sacred work in the world, with the understanding all work is sacred. Doctor, accountant, teacher, energy healer, counselor, grocer, writer, and artist. What is ours to do, we honor, will be different for each of us. We start first, before creating or doing anything with a pause, the inquiry of what is mine to do on behalf of equality in service to my Black brothers and sisters. We ask this question every day in meditation, and then we wait. We listen. In our experience, it's not long before the right action comes in the form of a book, a billboard, an employee, a protest, a painting, a song, a poem. And we just show up and do only what is ours to do. We also honor what others are doing, and we've learned to be mindful of criticizing or judging what someone else is doing as not enough or as not as important as what I'm doing. We seek to make love our agenda. In her book, A Politics of Love, Marianne Williamson writes this: how do we make love our agenda? By making it everything. Our generational problem, more than anything else, is our lack of full devotion. This miracle that will take us forward now is 100%, a 100% commitment to being who we need to be now and doing what we need to do. We light this chalice to honor our individual and collective inquiry today as we pause to ask, what is ours to do to create equality for all of the people of our nation?
Please join me in reciting the covenant of our church, which can be found in the order of service email that you received. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So each month, as you know, UUYO chooses an organization that is working to make our community a better place. And every month we give 100% of our loose collection to this organization to support transformation in our community, which is the heart of our mission. For the month of July, we will be supporting the Trumbull County Historical Society. The Trumbull County Historical Society collects, preserves, and promotes the ongoing heritage of Warren and Greater Trumbull County. They support this through developing and sustaining programs and exhibitions, raising awareness of historical buildings and sites, and partnering with local and regional institutions to provide education and enjoyment for audiences of all ages and interests. And recently, the Trumbull County Historical Society has launched the Voices Oral History Project, which seeks to preserve the experiences of elders in Warren's Black community. So far, they have included over 100 interviews and clips, and soon will also hold a gallery of items scanned and presented during Black History Month and a community event that will be held upcoming the next February. Importantly, before kicking off the project, the Historical Society reached out to residents and attended meetings and community events to gauge the desire for the project, and found a desire to show the larger community how racism is affecting the community in past and continues to have consequences today. Continuing to respond to the growing interest to learn more about Black history and the Black experience locally, the Historical Society has launched Black History Fridays on their Facebook page, in responding to the fact that true Black history does not often get taught in our schools. Black history is American history, and the Trumbull County Historical Society wants to do their part to teach the whole history. You can make your donations to the Trumbull County Historical Society and or to the church by visiting UUYO.org and clicking the Give Online button at the top of the website. Or you can click the link that is provided in the weekly email update. We now receive the offering that sustains the life of Youngstown, Warren, the Mahoning Valley, and our wider world.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining
Our first reading this morning is Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. And now invite you to settle into your seat, get comfortable, soften or close your eyes, and please join me in a few moments of silent meditation. Our second reading is a bit of a surprise. Langston Hughes, Let America Be America, again, has been not replaced, but we decided to include Frederick Douglass's What to the Slave is the 4th of July, seeing that this speech has been getting a lot of attention recently, and the message is very connected to the theme and the time of the service this morning. So this reading will come from excerpts of What to the Slave is the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass. Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. They were great men, too, great enough to give frame to a great age. It does not often happen to a nation to raise at one time such a number of truly great men. The point from which I am compelled to view them is not certainly the most favorable, and yet I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. For who is there so cold that a nation's sympathy could not warm him? So obdurate and dead to the claims of gratitude that would not thankfully acknowledge such priceless benefits, who so stolid and selfish that would not give his voice to swell the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee. And when the chains of servitude had been torn from his limbs, I am not that man. In a case like that, the dumb might eloquently speak, and the lame man leapt has a heart. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, and prosperity and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought light and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions, whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings with all your religious parade are to him more bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. Quote, the arm of the Lord is not shortened, and the doom of slavery is certain. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions, my spirit is also cheered by the obvious tendencies of this age.
Freedom, 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 yeah, freedom, 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 freedom. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Yeah, sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long, long way from home. Ooh, freedom, 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 oh freedom, yeah, freedom, 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 freedom.
Sometimes I feel like I'm almost there. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost there. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost there. A long, long way from home. Thinking about freedom, 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 freedom. Dreaming about freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom, 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 freedom. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sarah, give me a heads up if you can hear me, a thumbs up. Okay, thank you, that's all I needed. Okay. First of all, I want to thank Sarah for all of her help in putting this together. She picked some very good readings that go to the heart of what I wanted to speak of as well. So I appreciate that greatly. When I asked Joseph if I could do the service for the 4th of July, it was way before all of these events that occurred. And it has been overwhelming to see what's been happening. And it is quite a moment in our time. And so here we are. Independence Day, July 4th, 2020. A moment packed with reflection, irony, and possibility. Who are we? Who are we? How did we get here? How did we get here? Where do we go from here? In recent years, people have been deeply disturbed by multiple events that have arisen mostly as a result of the change in political power in our country. Foreign and domestic tampering in the 2016 presidential election, inhuman immigration lockups aimed at separating families of color, a Muslim ban, an outright disdain for women's rights, particularly women's reproductive rights, white supremacist rallies and movements sanctioned and defended by the White House, weakening of democratic process and separation of powers, across the board obstructions of justice, including perpetual attacks and threats on constitutional foundations, denials of scientific facts from climate change to the COVID-19 pandemic, repeated unnecessary killings of Black people by police, use of unmarked law enforcement personnel and attack helicopters to quell Black Lives Matter protests in Washington, D.C. A White House openly and actively protective of long vestigial Confederate monuments and Confederate flags and Confederate nameplates on military bases. Bounty killings of American soldiers by Russia, a crime that elicited absolutely no response at all from the White House, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Suddenly, it is all happening here. I'm sorry to go through all these things that you're all so well aware of, but right now, July 4th, 2020, we are re-evaluating our nation in ways we never have. As recent events have spiraled forward, attention has instinctively turned more acutely to our Constitution, to the intent of the founders, and to our foundational principles. The foundations of our country, equality, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, are under attack. The foundations of our democracy are under attack. The foundations of our humanity are under attack. It is now a time to reassess our foundations. It is time to stop responding only in anger and resentment and horror and pain and tears. We all respond in these ways, and that is okay and healthy and understandable. But we need to do more than simply respond. It's time to look deep into ourselves and into our history and determine if we really do like ourselves. This is a time to examine ourselves as a nation, to evaluate those things that we believe to be true, to evaluate what we stand for, to evaluate what we do. It is time to examine our fundamental principles. Who are we? Many turn to the Constitution to find an answer to that question. Who are we? Who are we? We are the people. We the people. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to protest. The Constitution has obviously been a huge factor in determining what we are individually and as a nation. It contains the framework for our system of democratic government, outlines vitally important rules and laws, including those related to the separation of church and state, separation of powers, and the establishment and organization of the military. It is a weighty and overarching expression of our system of government. It is most certainly under attack. But the Constitution is not the foundation. Constitutional choices are based on principles and values. Laws are based on principles and values. Our true foundation lies underneath our laws and our rules. Our true foundation lies underneath even our Constitution. Our foundation is our principles. Our principles are mostly laid out in the Declaration of Independence. In the mid-1770s, after years of struggle and growth in the New World, the American colonies were at a turning point. Very similar in many ways to our little turning point. The colonists had been willing participants in slavery for decades. Let me read that again. The colonists had been willing participants in slavery for decades. They had engaged in many bloody struggles with Native American Indian tribes. Now the colonists were beginning to see themselves as being on the receiving end of tyranny, oppression, and injustice. And the injustices they had been dealt by England and King George became fuel for rebellion. They needed to become a separate country, and they needed to define their terms. Reaching agreement on independence would not be easy. Division within the Congress was deep and difficult, as some colonists were stubbornly reluctant to lose their lucrative and secure arrangements with Britain and otherwise. On June 11th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson was chosen by the Continental Congress to write a Declaration of Independence to express colonial intent to sever all British involvement in colonial government and thereby establish a new nation. With the incredible weight of the future of the new world on his shoulders, knowing that he and his fellow representatives faced certain death if they were to fail in achieving independence, Jefferson set to writing, carefully crafting his words in order to best express the foundational truths of the American people. He said he wanted to express the American mind. He set out to write down in words a declaration of fundamental principles, a document that could best answer that question, who are we? Who are we? This is how Jefferson answered that question. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. 35 words. This single sentence from the preamble of the Declaration of Independence is, of course, a declaration of universal principles and human rights, except for the men part. I'll get back to that, though. These 35 words have echoed throughout the country, throughout the globe, throughout history, since July 4th, 1776. The principles Jefferson lays out here are an eloquent expression of human rights, a foundational expression of human rights, inalienable human rights, self-evident truths, not subjective, unverifiable, transient opinions, and manipulated, manufactured reality. These are truths that are evident to all, that cannot be denied. Equality, the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. John Locke was an influence on Jefferson, a philosopher and thinker of political science. He had it as the right to life, liberty, and property. Jefferson changed it. An interesting change. Jefferson's words are extremely well crafted and resonate deeply. However, the actions that our country took, both before and after the writing of the Declaration, reflect a nation with much left unaccomplished. This has never been more clear than it is today. We have not lived up to our own principles. Jefferson and Washington and many other founders and leaders before, during, and after the Revolution were slave owners. Many also held little regard for Native American Indians. Women are not mentioned at all in the Declaration. In fact, they are egregiously overlooked with the statement, all men are created equal. We as a nation need to come to terms with our own contradictions if we are to become the nation whose foundation includes equality. With apologies to Thomas Jefferson, a good start might be to improve on the oversight of all men are created equal and change the wording to truly reflect equality with all are created equal, or all people are created equal. Our nation was founded by flawed men. Yes, they were great thinkers and leaders and innovators. They were men who undeniably accomplished great things that changed our world and changed history. And they did so under great threat to all of them. But they were flawed, just like the rest of us. Let us give them their due for what they accomplished through much difficulty and turmoil. They did their extraordinary part. But let's not shrink from admonishing them for poor judgment and racism. It is time to heal. The torch has been passed to us. If our principles are to be lived up to, it must now be us who bring it about. It is on us now. We need to build a more equal world based on the ideals and principles we have been handed down. We need to fight to fulfill the promise of those original fundamental principles and rights and laws that are built around them. Equality, justice, freedom, liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of peaceable assembly, the right to peaceful protest. But this is not all. In 2020, we are seeing perhaps the greatest threat our democracy has faced. Tyranny. Authoritarian, aristocratic, monarchical tyranny. This is what Jefferson wrote in the Declaration regarding government and tyranny. This follows the great opening passage of the preamble. It follows the "we hold these truths to be self-evident, that to secure these rights, these unalienable rights, inalienable, I've heard it both ways, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Let me read that again. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The Declaration and the Constitution were created to a great degree to prevent tyranny and authoritarian, monarchical, aristocratic rule. And to prevent that from ever taking hold in America. We never wanted it to happen here. We never thought it could happen here. The founders did. It can happen here. It is happening here. And we are participating in it, witnessing it, living it every day. Yes, every breath, every action. It happens at a rapid pace. It happens slowly in the shadows. It happens suddenly. It happens predictably. It starts out small, and it grows to overpowering dimensions. It lingers. It consumes all. But resistance happens too. Oppression and injustice give rise to resistance. Opposition grows. Streets fill with protest. Monuments and symbols of oppression and racism fall. Coalitions arise out of a realization of common goals and purpose. Peace overcomes violence and oppression. We find that we have shared principles. Change happens. It can happen here. It is happening here. We have to make it happen. Together.
Please pray with me. And our prayer this morning comes to us from Holly Westbrook, and it is called Holy and Generous Love. Go in hope, for the arc of the universe is long, and we can bend it towards justice. Go in courage, for together we have the strength to confront injustice in our daily lives and the larger world. Go in love, because a holy and generous love is both the reason and the means by which we transform our lives.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts until we meet again.
As always, as you depart, please remember the one great fact. You are loved and never truly alone.
It can happen here. It can happen here. Yeah. It can happen here. 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 It can happen here.